Hi everyone, Nigel Saunders here. Welcome back to part 2 of pruning my Serissa in the style of an African Acacia tree. In part 1 of this series, I pruned up the underside of the canopy and the outer profile of the canopy to get that curved foliage mass that's reminiscent of the Pierneef paintings of South African trees. This Pierneef style, having this curved canopy, is very reminiscent of the acacias that grow in the African plains. If we come in and look above here, you can see it's just one big pad of foliage. So my next step is to break it up. I'm going to follow each branch up like I always do, and then get some separation between the branches. So there's some negative space between them, and then vary the height of them very slightly too. So when you look at it from the front view, you see some negative space and also some variation in height. And that gives it a more miniature appearance. It's a very hot day today. There's heat advisory warnings. We're going up to 32 degrees Celsius with high humidity. So it feels very, very tropical out here. So I've got the tinfoil on my trees to help keep the pots and the root base cool. So you can see I have it around the pine to keep the sun off the black pot so the roots stay cooler. So I've got a lot of trees with the tinfoil on, and I put it mainly on the ones that dry out fairly quickly. So ones that use a lot of water in the sun. Let's check in on some. They're in the shade now. They've had their sun for today. Let's see if it's still moist underneath. Oh, it is. It's really nice, and it feels cool. It feels very cool. That's amazing. So this tinfoil did a really good job on the hibiscus today and the Chinese elm. I'm going to check on the ones in the sun here and see how cool they are. Yeah, that soil is really nice and cool underneath. So that's awesome. It works really well. Yeah, still moist, the soil. I'll get the tree on the turntable and begin the pruning. It's quite nice working here. The tree's in the sun and I'm in the shade, so it makes it quite pleasant to work on the trees on these hot days. So I'm going to trace all my branches up and begin the pruning, separating all the major branches so there's space around them. I'll also be pruning the branches for direction, trying to create interesting clumps of foliage. Yeah, it's pretty meticulous work doing this detailed pruning. It's a far cry from using the blue scissors. You have to look at every branch, decide which one you want to keep, where to prune it to. I'm starting to get some separation in my branches. You can see them here. There's some negative space between them. So you've got to study each branch. see what you can prune away to get that space. So I've got a lot of work to go. So I'll just keep at it. I am still working away. So here's my progress from the front view. You can see how it's not just like a dome canopy anymore. It's broken up into clumps of foliage. When I look from above, you can start to see through the canopy to the ground, whereas over here it's just, you know, dense with leaves. So starting to thin it and get, you know, all my branches flowing nice, giving each branch a spot of sunlight. It's tricky work. It takes a lot of studying the tree, looking at all the options, and then taking action. But I think it's looking better. I think it looks more miniature now with that big dome canopy broken up into clumps. I am still making progress. You can see this half, you can see through the canopy more, and this half is still very dense and topiary looking. So yeah, I'm doing a lot of pruning for direction, getting all my branches to flow outwards at the edges, kind of 3/4 up in the middle and vertical in the top of the canopy. So, and still trying to isolate foliage clumps. So here's one here that I could get a bit of space, so I'll come in here and prune that away, giving me a little space in there. And the more you open it up, the more you can see the branches, and it gets a little easier, I find. But it's a meticulous process. There's a lot of decisions to make. But I think the result in the end is worth it. You get a really nice looking miniature canopy. I think it's looking quite nice. And it'll probably all fill in again, but each time you do this, you're building up that core structure. You know, these pads and everything. And, you know, eventually as the tree grows larger, those become these kind of branches, the solid main branches. And then you keep working on the finer ones. And yeah, it's quite a process. It's a lot of fun seeing it develop slowly over the years. I have finished pruning up my Serissa. Let's go in now and have a look. It's time now for today's updates. Here's a look at the white ash that I dug up from the front garden. You can see how tall it is. So I was thinking, you know, do I prune it now or do I wait till fall when the leaves fall off? And I think I'm going to wait. Because it was just dug up this year, it's still growing its root system in the soil. So if I were to prune it now, it might weaken it for the winter, and then in spring I might get poor growth on it. So I'm going to be patient. I'm going to just let the leaves fall off in fall, and then I'll go in and prune it down hard to a shorter tree. And then by spring there should be new buds forming all over the trunk, and it should grow quite nicely and be a lot more compact. So I think my eventual height will be somewhere, you know, quite short where I chop it. I've got a trunk coming up here. It divides into two out the back here. So yeah, I'm going to really reduce it down, making it quite a short tree, at least half, maybe even a third of the height. Over here on the table of forests, I'm really liking this composition here. This is the tree that had all these multiple trunks. It's sort of a clump style, and I planted a whole bunch of seedlings around it to kind of create a forest setting. So you kind of have to look into the forest to see, you know, the tallest tree in the forest, the oldest tree, the most magnificent tree, and these are just going to be styled like young trees. Sort of that contrast between the old tree and the young trees. So yeah, I think it's getting closer to being show ready, this composition, so I'll be working on this fairly soon. And it needs repotting desperately. You can see how it's kind of lifting out of the pot a bit. So it needs a larger pot, and I'm going to try and find a clay pot for it. So if I do put it in a show, it'll be all set. So that'll be kind of exciting. And I might be able to just slip pot it into a new pot without disturbing the roots, and it'll do fine. So that's a possibility for a fall show tree. So I'll be working on the top of it fairly soon in an upcoming video. My mulberry tree that I just pruned recently, you can see all the new shoots on it coming out. They're very fast growing trees. Excellent for bonsai. Nice leaf size, fast growing, that can take root pruning. So that's exciting, seeing it regrow. My purple smoke tree, I had it in the greenhouse and it wasn't looking good. I thought it was too hot. So I brought it outside and it's not looking good. I think there used to be some green leaves down here, but I don't know. I think it's bit the dust. It was so close to surviving this tree. I think it just didn't make it. I did severe root pruning on it. Maybe just a little too much. So there's a case where, the severe root pruning didn't pay off. But if it had I would have had a nice tree, but it didn't. So I just try again. My Siberian elm forest, the one I got from Ricardo at the Toronto Bonsai Society's spring show, is doing really well. You can see all the new growth on it. So I'm not doing anything to this planting this year, except maybe some weeding. And then I'm going to arrange them as a forest and prune them up in spring. So that'll be exciting. They did get attacked by some Japanese beetles. You can see on the leaves here how they've been eating them. And I saw 3 of them on it the one day. So yeah, I killed those things, gave them to the chickens, and hopefully there won't be any more. My asparagus fern is growing really well this year. You can see the nice long trailing foliage on it. There's also flowers up here. You can see them here. And they turn into red berries, so they're kind of nice to have. I wish it was on all the branches, but it's not. So that's kind of exciting, seeing it grow with lots of vigor over the summer. My giant sequoias are looking a little more giant every day. There's the forest of them. Yeah, they're growing really well. Nice growth on them. It's exciting. So I've got all kinds of different sizes. So these will be going into a forest, of course. That'll be cool, making a giant sequoia forest. That'll be awesome. It was nice to get my Serissa all pruned up. I think breaking the canopy up into foliage pads really makes it look more miniature. I'm very pleased with the results. And that's all for today. I'm Nigel Saunders. Thanks for joining me in the Bonsai Zone.